And I print because I'm pretty good at it, to be quite candid with you. You know, 9 times out of 10, I get the ink on the right side of the paper, and that's about where I want to be. And I'm getting better at spelling, so I don't have as many typos as I once did. But that kind of loses some of the charm of what I do. And I just like what I do. So I'm supposed to give an artist talk, but like I say, I'm not an artist. I'm just a human being who likes to make stuff. And that is what we all like to do. We like to make stuff. We like to create. We like to explore. We like to have our imagination challenged and, you know, just go out there. So I am just as unique as you, and I share the same things that you share as a human. The desire to create, the desire to express my thoughts, the desire to live in a certain level of peace and tranquility. And I have to admit that the longer I do this, the more the environment that I'm in attracts people that have the same sort of thoughts, the same sort of ideas that I have. So I begin to live in an environment that fosters what I do. And it assists me in doing it more. Because one of the things, again, that we as humans have is the capacity for generosity. And this is greater than our capacity for greed. We are generous. And the reason that I know we are generous is that if we were not generous, we would not be here. Because our offspring are the weakest of all newborns that come. It takes years for a human to develop to the point where they can survive on their own. The only reason they can do that is because we as human beings want and we assist them in it. We foster an environment where our young can grow and develop. Because without it, they're dead in 6 months. You know, how long does it take a baby to walk, you know? 9 months, 10 months? They couldn't live in the wild, crawling around for 10 months. A predator would eat them. But we create an environment. This is the generosity that we have. We take care of old because we're generous. And also, we're going to get old one day. And so we want to pass that on. So these are traits that we have as humans that we need to recognize and celebrate. Traits of generosity, of caring, of sharing, of developing. Because this is the way that we will grow as a species, as a civilization. And I think this is the sort of civilization that we want to be in. One that will allow each person to maximize their potential. Because if I do not allow you, or if I put obstacles in the way of you not reaching your full potentials, those obstacles stop me from reaching my full potential. The only way I can keep you down is that I stay down with you. The only way that I can be raised up is that you are raised up at the same time. We are all in this together. There is no I, there is we. Malcolm X once said, when you change I to we, illness becomes wellness. And this civilization needs to stop being an I civilization and start being a we civilization so we can become well. And I think this is one of the things that people who create and make things do, is that they recognize the we. Because to create and make things is a huge leap of faith, because you are exposing yourself to criticism, you are exposing yourself to ridicule, but you are saying that I want to do this because I feel it is better for society. I want to put myself out there, which a lot of people, we learn to be afraid to put ourselves out there. We hide our talents. We hide because, oh, it's not good enough. Who cares if it's not good enough? You know, did you enjoy doing it? Yes, then it's good enough. Well, so-and-so doesn't like it. That's not my problem. I like it. And I'm happy. And so I will that happiness will be expressed in what I do, and also in the way I walk, in the way I talk, and just the way I interact with people. So this is what it's about. Having the freedom to pursue the dreams that you want. It is harder not to pursue your dreams than to pursue it. I can attest to that. For 20 years, I did not pursue my dreams. And although I had what they consider the ideal American lifestyle, I was extremely miserable. And when I kind of said, screw it, and I went out on my own, I had absolutely nothing. There was a time that and I still do it, I pick up pennies off the street because that's what I needed to get by. But I didn't care because I was doing what I wanted to. And gradually, like the other day, I found a $20 bill on the street, so things are looking up, That's what you get for picking up pennies. You look down and there's a $20 bill one day. And but I just this is what I wanted to do. And people say, well, wasn't it difficult? And I said, and no, it was more difficult not to do it than it was to do it. It just drained me of energy not to do it. Now I seem to have a lot of energy, and I'm happy, I'm constantly happy because hey, I get to do what I want to do all day. I'm out here in Oakland, California. I could be in Detroit right now where it's I think it's 32 degrees, and it's a hot day. But I'm here, and I'm surrounded by people who love beautiful things and who validate what I do because you've come out tonight. And I appreciate that because I really like to put ink on paper, and I like to see people happy because of it. Because there is a certain joy in making people happy. And I think sometimes we deny ourselves that opportunity, which is a great thing to lose. Every opportunity you have to make someone happy, you should take it. Because it comes back to you. It feeds you. It feeds your happiness. The happiness that you have grows because of that. Happiness is one of these things that you have to give away to get more. You can't keep it to get more. You have to give it away. So I would encourage you, be happy every day. Some days you get a blue funk. But that just lets you appreciate the happy days more. And it's really great to see people with a smile on their face because of something you did or something you said. When I moved to Detroit, I was a little reluctant because, as you all know, there are horrible things. There's horrible news about Detroit. But when I got there, I had a friend. I have a friend on the street that I live. And he said, well, Amos, I find that if I speak to people and I show interest in them, it changes everything. The guy on the street that looks, surly and he may attack you, but if you say, hi, how you doing? Hey, I'm Amos, what's your name? I just moved here. And, they turn out to be people who want to do something, but the civilization that we have has denied them, and they've put up roadblocks, and they've kind of not figured out how to get around the roadblocks. But I think everyone, except for maybe, there are some people out there that are genuinely evil, but most people are genuinely good, and they want good things to happen to them, and they want to do good things. And sometimes they hide it. But it's up to you as an individual to expose it. And the way you do that is by treating people the way you want to be treated. You want people to say hi to you on the street. You want people to respect you. So this is what you do. And this is one of the things that I've done, for definitely the last 10 years, is to listen to people's dreams and hopes and encourage. That's one of the great things you can do, is to encourage someone to continue. You can ask questions, but when you ask questions, the questions should allow them to think and to look at ways of growing. When I was in school, we had these profs that had a reputation for making people cry during the critique. And I'm like, why would you want to make, you're 50 years old. Why you want to make an 18-year-old cry? Yeah, you're supposed to be there to help. And if you cannot help in a positive way, maybe you should go someplace else. Because you definitely don't have an art career. I don't see you any place, So you're just here tormenting, young people. And, like, for what? If this is the way you get your kicks, you are strange and you need mental, you need some help. Have any of you had a person like that? See, I was fortunate. See, I was 40 when I went back to school. And most of my teachers were like 50. A lot of them were like 30. So, I was a contemporary. I'm looking at them and saying, I've seen all this. I've lived long enough to know what bullshit is. And you've handed a bunch of bullshit, Because if you were great, you wouldn't be here teaching, And if you were a great teacher, you wouldn't be doing this. You wouldn't be doing it this way. Because people who want to teach want to share. They want to share what they know. They want to share what they love because they want that to continue. And you do not share by breaking someone down. Well, it makes them tough. Don't worry about being tough. If you live long enough, you get tough. How many of you remember the first time you touched something hot? And now, you go there and there's the pot and you just grab it and, because you've gotten tough, you have no more nerves in your hand, your hands have gotten old and calloused and, I don't feel anything anymore. Life will toughen you.
But life's hard enough as it is.
Yeah. Life will toughen you up just by living. You lose some sensitivities, because, your hands get calluses, and so it's like, and you also have the experience of getting burned. Well, it wasn't as bad as last time, so, hey, that wasn't a real burn, So that will happen naturally. So give people latitude. Help them to develop. Help them to follow their dream. I think one of the greatest things you can do is to assist someone in making their dreams come true. And I hope all of you have had someone who helps you make your dreams come true, because then you recognize how important it is. Yeah.
And seeing people that aren't afraid to.
Excuse me, this is my time.
Yeah. To see as yourself as an example.
Right.
A couple other artists that are as a good
As
example.
for what?
Someone who's pursuing what they want to do.
Yeah, I think.
Thrilled about it.
Yeah, I can tell you that I'm like right up there, it's like I'm so, I was telling Matt and Lena, I have got so here's what happens, okay? So I get a stack of paper that's blank, okay? And then I print something on it. Then I have just a stack of paper with something printed on it, but it's still a stack of paper. And so I have like huge stacks of paper in my shop where I've printed stuff on. And I was saying, I could have a sale and sell everything at like $1 a piece and become filthy rich, but everything wouldn't sell, because I still got more, because every day all I want to do is put ink on paper. And I give stuff away because I don't, when you give something away, people come to my shop and I give them like stacks of posters, and they just as happy, and I'm happy too because I got that stack down a little bit so I can put some new stuff on it, and it's like, yeah, I just love the print, and I love to see people happy because oh yeah, people really enjoy what I do, and I'm like, that makes me feel good. I love it when children get involved and like my stuff, because when children like my stuff, the parents have to buy it. So if any of you are out in arts out there, you want to sell to kids. Mattel didn't get rich selling to adults. They got rich telling kids to tell their parents what they wanted. So you make stuff for children, and they will tell their parents, that's what I want. But the other thing is that if a child is brought up around art, brought up buying or having art in their room, they will be art collectors or art connoisseurs as they get older. And I would rather have children buying art than buying another pair of Nike sneakers. Because I don't make Nike sneakers, nor do I have stock in Nike. but I do have a stake in art, So, think about children when you make if you're an artist, think about how do I make something that a child would appreciate and would want in their want in their room, because the parents will definitely buy it. Yeah. So that's it. I'll answer questions because that's better with yes.
How did you find your way to printing? How did you find out that printing was the thing you loved to do?
Well, that's in the movie. Go watch a movie. No, I've always been fascinated with the printed word. I've always been fascinated with books, even as a small child, just as an object. I didn't read a lot, but I looked at a lot of books. And one summer, I took my sons to Williamsburg in Virginia, and I saw a printing press there, and I was just intrigued by the letterpress process. And then I was living in Chicago, and I went back to Chicago, and there was an organization kind of like this, but it was only devoted to books and paper, called Artist Bookworks. And I took a class there, and it was just as simple as just leaping off of a cliff. Everything, and nothing, you had nothing to worry about after you jumped, because gravity took over, and for some reason, I haven't hit the bottom yet. But that's basically it. I just saw it, and I was intrigued by it, and then when I did it, my teacher said that she had been teaching long enough that she knew when somebody pulled the first impression, if they were hooked or not, just because there was something that just transformed as that. Because I had a Vandercook, they had the Vandercook kind of like this. There was something that transformed in them when they saw that first impression. And I was one of those people. And like 6 months later, I got a printing press. Fortunately, my wife at the time was out of town for a considerable amount of time. So I converted the basement into a print shop. And when she came back, there was a little discussion about it, and I said, feel free to move it out, But it's kind of hard to move a 1,200-pound press, out. Going upstairs is a lot harder than going downstairs, as I found out. But she didn't, and then it just kind of snowballed, And I think that's what happens when you connect with something. Gradually, it just snowballs into the point where you have to take another leap of faith and say, this is what I want to do. I didn't define my success as I want to be in this gallery, I want to sell this much. It was just I want to be able to print. And I tried numerous ways of printing. I tried to have a business doing cards and business cards and stationery, and I tried to make books. But when I moved to Alabama in 2002, 2002, I needed a quick way to make money, and so I started doing posters. And the first poster I did, I had a huge misspelled word on it, and I didn't have any more paper, and it would take a while for the paper to get there. So then I printed over the top of it several times. I tell people I'm like a doctor. I bury my mistakes. But that became a defining thing of my work. I do a lot of layers. So that became a way of defining my work. So I do all these layers now. And people say, some of those posters out there have been through the press 6 times. And people say, well, oh, that's a lot of work. And I say, I wouldn't know. I was having fun, And you know how it is? How many of you get in your studio or you get someplace and suddenly it's like 2 o'clock in the morning and you say, oh, shit, I better go to bed. But what? I just started. Because you're like, I'm going to do this for only an hour, and then like 3 hours later, it's like, I got to give it up because I got to get some sleep. And, you get transformed in the moment of creating. And so that's how that happened. Yes.
Is there what's your process of picking your fonts or your typefaces for your posters? Is there a font you gravitate towards, or you just kind of pick them randomly?
Because letterpress is no longer commercially viable, and because I only use handset type and basically handset type, I am limited. But as the old adage goes, limitation galvanizes the imagination. So I have to work with what I have. And so I have some type, and so that's what I work with. I have found out that I do like tall and narrow type, and that's what I have a lot of. But most of my type is what's called sans serif. It doesn't have the serifs on it. If you're not a graphic designer, you're not missing anything, you know? And if you're a graphic designer, I don't want to talk to you. Although I have an MFA in graphic design, I've never been a graphic designer. And nor will I do work for a graphic designer, you know? You know, I have a very good friend who's a graphic designer. I'm like, nope, you know? And anytime I need like anything like Photoshop or, you know, anything like that, I send it to him, you know? Like, yeah, you know? Like, well, Amos, you were a computer programmer. I know. The operative word there was. So it's basically by limitation of what I have in my shop. And I think that that creates the look. And so it's kind of limited, but, you know, life is limited. You know, and, you know, there's this saying that, oh, the hardest thing is to stare at a blank canvas or a blank sheet of paper. But once you get started, you know, you generate it. And so it's kind of like that because I have this limitation. It's like, oh, you know, oh, I would really like to have this. I can never have this. So stop that crap and go make something. Yes?
I had a question. What do you think the future of letterpress is? It's an antiquated art. How do you get youth interested in it?
Well, I think it's antiquated. I think that people should give it up. And if you have any wood type, you should send it to me. You know, I agree wholeheartedly. Do you have any wood type? Because, like, yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with you. You know, because you know, you can never have too much wood type. Well, letterpress, I think, it has made a comeback because a lot of the students at universities, all they do is digital, and so suddenly they have this physical. And we as humans have to, you know, we need physical contact. We need to touch things. And so the idea that you can manipulate these objects fascinates some people. Also the idea that you have limitations, you know, it's like, oh, that really, how am I going to make this fit with these things? You know, that becomes a challenge, and I think people like that. So more and more universities are actually taking up letterpress as one of the if not a line in their studies, you know, within the courses, letterpress is being. So I think it'll be around for a long time. Yes?
What was your decision in going back to going to art school? What were you trying to get out of?
Well, okay, I went to art school. I went to the University of Madison. And so I'm of the generation that you went to school, especially my generation, and you stayed there till you got a degree with the hopes that the Vietnam War would be over with. Okay? That's why I went to college. It was either Vietnam or college, and I figured college would be a little bit better, a little safer. And so I did not know that you could go to a university in graduate school and just take a couple of courses and never get a degree and that's it. So I thought I had to be actually in the program. So, you know, I applied for the program. But the University of Wisconsin at that time had one of the greatest book artists in the world, Walter Hamady, on the faculty. And I wanted to study with him. So if you're going to go to graduate school, only go to graduate school because you want to study with somebody at that graduate school, you know. And if I had known that I could have taken all of Walter's classes for 3 years and never gotten a degree, boom, I would have done it. As a matter of fact, I was about to walk because I had been there for 3 years. And I was about to walk, and one of the faculty got a call saying that a university wanted a prof for the next semester for an adjunct. And they recommended me. And so I spent 2 weeks scrambling around trying to get an I changed to a C so I could graduate, so I could get the degree. But I was not interested. I was interested in learning from Walter, not the degree, you know. And I tell students now, if you're going to graduate school, pick somebody that you really want to study with, go there and take a whole lot of classes the first year, and the next year when they give you your check, go out and buy yourself a printing press and never come back. Because it's the doing that makes you good. You know, you can have a great prof, you can have someone who's really talented, but unless you are making, unless you are doing it, you're never going to grow. And the thing is that we live in a society where failure is taught more than success. As human beings, there is no such thing as failure. Failure is something that is taught. If there was such a thing as failure, none of us would be here right now because we would be sitting someplace because we could never walk or talk. But you take a small child and, you know, they're beginning to walk and they fall down, Do you say, "Oh shit, you can't walk, just stay there"? No, you say, "Get up, oh, so good, get up, do it again." You know? And so for years you encourage your children to, they fall down, they don't say the right word, you encourage them to do it again. Then when they get in high school, and they wreck the car, it's like, no, that's it. You failed, you failed. It's like, this is why kids get neurotic. For years you were encouraging me every time I messed up. Now I mess up and you're like, you're going to punish me. So, and this is, I seriously believe that, we teach failure. Because if we didn't, people wouldn't talk. Because no one comes out speaking, whole sentences. It's like, God, die. Whoa, he said daddy. Yeah, that's what he said, daddy, And he said die. He didn't say nothing else, But, we can say it again, And so we need to, yeah, more questions? Benediction then? Again, yes.
Do you take trips or do you have shows around the world?
I take trips, not only with acid. No, I do. I travel around the world. I kind of travel. Recently I'm trying to restrict my travel to the Western Hemisphere, and I have a 501c3 called, okay, you ready for this? It's called The Printing Plant, the Printery of the Americas. And the reason I did this is because in letterpress printing, most of the time we look to Europe, Italy, Germany, for our inspirations. But in the Western Hemisphere, printing has been around for like 200, 300 years. And so we've kind of, we can kind of discount, Mexico, Central America, South America. And so I want to create a bridge to connect the printers, especially letterpress printers, in those countries with North America. And also the country above us, Canada, yeah. Yeah, and which is really interesting because in Canada, the government subsidizes the publishing of independent books. So literary books, they subsidize that. There's not a lot of money, but it's a hell of a lot more than you get here in the United States. And guess what? Canada's not as rich as the United States. But they can find money to subsidize independent publishers. So I travel there. I used to travel to Europe a lot. But you get older, and those flights get harder on you, so you don't do it that much. Yeah.
What about India? India is really big on printing.
I would love to go to India, and maybe one day I'll save up enough money that I can do that, because you can do anything if you save a little bit of money. And this is another interesting thing. Again, in our civilization, I joined a credit union recently, and every month I get advertisement for a new loan. You can now get a loan to buy a bicycle. And when 30 years ago, you would get advertisements for ways to save money. They weren't into giving, they would give loans, but they were more interested in you saving money. And so, to go to India costs a little bit of money, but, it'd be something that I would say, I'm going to save up for 2 years and go to India. And I probably will. I would like to go over there just because, letterpress printing is still done over there, and there's a lot of other printing that is done, relief type printing that's done. And then the colors of India are like so explosive that I would just like to immerse myself in that. So maybe at some point, but right now I have this project. It's called A Pile of Bricks. And in Detroit 2 years ago, I bought a 3,500 square foot building for, I think about $1,800. Yeah. Of course, it doesn't have a roof. It's missing like a roof and electricity and windows. But I got the basics there. I got a pile of bricks. A friend called it a pile of bricks. So I got 4 good walls, And I'm in the process of renovating this. And it's been an ongoing project for the last 2 years. And it's one of those things that is going to cost me somewhere around $150,000. But I figure, $10,000 a year over 15 years, it'll be done, And that gives me something to, like, oh, I can't die now, I'm not through yet. So, but when I'm finished, then I can die, And there'll be this beautiful building that somebody gets to inherit. It's like, hey, anybody want a building full of printing equipment? So I have this 501c3, and that also ties into the North America, South America, because it's called the Printery of the Americas, because it incorporates all the Western Hemisphere, and to join together printers. Because I went down there about 2 years ago, and you would have thought, like, I was like, this reception is nothing compared to what they gave me down there. And it was simply because we, as people of the United States, really neglect, Central America and South America. We don't go down there enough. We don't interact with, on an individual basis. Everybody wants to take a vacation to, Italy, but no one says I want to go to Argentina. Maybe it has some people, but like most people don't say that, But it's beautiful, It's like wonderful to travel and to see what that's like. And so that's what the pile of bricks is all a part of that. And so I have that, and that's an ongoing project that I will tell you, we actually put a roof on it last year. And this year we're going to put in a new slab. And I would like to get what is known as a certificate of occupancy this year so I can move my equipment in and I can start to actually use it as my facilities. And then, so that's kind of like the long range plan. But it's one of those things where you just kind of, you could either go $250,000 in debt and have it in 3 weeks, or you can be debt-free and have it in 4 years. And I like debt-free. I don't know about, like having no debt is like really cool. The only thing cooler than having no debt is having no rent. And as we all know, if you didn't have a mortgage or rent, what would you do with all that money? You have like lots of money. And like, so if you don't need it, you don't need it. And so suddenly you can live off of, $24,000 a year. And the only other thing that's missing is single-payer health care, which we should have in this nation. But there is one school of thought, the reason we don't have it is because people wouldn't work, because most of health care insurance is associated with a job. And so if, because, you're out there, if you're 20, you don't worry about stuff like that. But if you get to be like 60, suddenly it becomes a real issue, And so it's like, if you didn't have that, if you had single-payer health care, this would be a completely different civilization. Because people would feel free after college to go and pursue that, that's not economically viable. But if I don't try it, I won't know it. And everything doesn't have to be economically viable, but if you can get by, that's about all we're going to do in this world, is get by. So you might as well get by happy than get by miserable. And if that means I don't own a Harley Davidson when I'm 55 years old, I can live with that. Yep. Yes?
Does the mystery of ink on paper ever diminish for you?
No, it constantly grows. Because the wonderful thing about life is that sometimes you get to make the same mistake over and over again, and it fascinates you even more. And it is just a thrill. And so there's this documentary that I'm in, and one of the people in it says, Amos, like he's the kind of guy that 2 o'clock in the morning you're down here printing, and all of a sudden you hear him say, hell, I love to print. Just scream it out. And I do. And there's no one there but me. And I just like make this declaration because, if you make things, then you know that suddenly all this energy builds up inside of you and it just explodes. And you're like, you're just so freaking happy, to make stuff. It is a joy to make stuff. This is why I want everybody to make whatever stuff they want to make. And don't worry about what the rest of the world says. If you enjoy it, that's what counts. Because there's someone else out there that will enjoy it. Well, and one of my great examples is the Gee's-Benz quilts that stormed the art world. But these women were making quilts to keep their family warm. They weren't sitting around saying, what kind of statement do I want to make in my quilt? And how do I want the colors to be juxtaposed to make this happen? They were like, I got to make a quilt to keep my child warm. And if you read some of the interpretations of it, you would think that these people had a PhD in art history before they started making their quilts, answering all sorts of these art history sort of questions. But, they were just making quilts to keep the family warm. Yes, as you do things, you learn about the materials. As you do things, you learn about color. And this becomes, this influences some of the decisions you make. But it is just this process of the doing. It is the doing that makes you better. And in our civilization, sometimes they stop us from doing. But again, you did not walk the first time you tried, but that did not stop you from trying again. So do not stop doing after the first time because, it doesn't look right. Of course it doesn't look right. You know why it doesn't look right? Because the person who's looking at it now is not the person who started it 15 minutes ago or 2 days ago. The process changed you. You grew. And what you're looking at is what you grew from, not what you grew to. And so you're always looking behind at your work, not forward, because your work is behind you because you've grown. Yes?
I love that quote you shared that Malcolm X said about we change, I can't exactly remember it, but changing I to we changes illness to wellness.
Correct.
I wanted you to just talk more about that. What does that mean for you and your work? How has that changed the way you approach creativity and making things?
Well, I mean, the idea of we is really important, because it is we. We are one. We are the human race. And this is the way we survive. But we have this idea of the individual, the great individual. We are a nation of individuals. And you know what the biggest lie in this all is? Is that the West was run by individual men. The West is the most government-dependent region in the United States of America. The only reason why the West developed was because of the wealth of the East and the South. It was that tax dollars that put the forts out here and did all that. But in the 50s, we had this idea of, I'm John Wayne and I'm going to tame the West, the individual. But, when you look at civilization, it has always been a we. But in this civilization and in other civilizations, and, call me a sexist, but we have the idea of the great man or the great person. But no one is greater than the people that support them. This is what makes, if you have any idea of greatness, it is the support systems around you. One of my great examples is, like we talk about how great doctors are because they do brain surgery or they can do heart surgery on an infant and save an infant's life. And I tell people, well, a person who's great in my life is my mechanic because he makes sure my brakes work so I don't kill myself and someone else. But no one ever goes around and says, I got one hell of a great mechanic. That person does some excellent work. But, you go to the doctor and he does, heart surgery. Oh, my doctor was wonderful. He was like one of the great heart, like you only had one time, one heart surgeon. This person fixes your brakes, fixes your car repeatedly throughout the year, but you never praise them as like this is, like not only does he save your life, but he saves lives of other people on the street. And so that, again, this is this I, this great person, this one thing, as opposed to the we, And what good is a doctor if there isn't a janitor to clean so the hospital doesn't have diseases? Because, you can die in a hospital from the diseases that are in there. You don't have to bring anything in. You can just show up and die. And it's the janitorial staff that makes sure, that heart surgeon isn't going out and making sure things are clean. But no one says, wow, the janitors are doing a great job here today. I have a story that I tell, and it's a true story about a student of mine who was, he took a class, and it was a semester-long class, and I have no idea what it was about. But at the end of the class, the final exam had one question on it, and that is, what's the janitor's name? Despite the fact that they passed the janitor every day that they were in the building, no one knew the janitor's name. And he said since then, the first thing he does is introduce himself to the staff, the support staff. Because we, like, oh, I know who the department head is, I know who the dean is. No, it's these people that make everything else happen. That if the dean cannot be the dean without the support. But we know the dean, but we don't know the support. So that's all part of that I and we. And we are, that's the way we exist because of the we, not the I. Okay? All right. As I said, this is a fundraiser for the Oakland Public Library. I want you to dig deep into your pockets. I want you to buy lots of posters because these posters, this is a sale. Normally my posters go for a lot more than this. $10 more. Seriously, but I really want, because the thing is that, then it's us giving back to the community. Yes.
Where do you live?
I live in Detroit, Michigan. Yeah.
How long do you come out here to the West Coast office?
No, I have a restriction to the number of times. Matt and Leah have paid people in your legislature to restrict the number of times. So, when I show up at the airport more than 4 times, the police ask me to leave. No, I've been to Oakland quite a few times. I was in Oakland earlier this year. No, last year. I was in Oakland last year.
And then in Detroit, where is a place as an artist that I would go and visit where artists can community? Is there a particular community there?
Well, it's all over the place. If you come to Detroit, I would recommend that you go see Dobble's Museum of Art. He has an installation called Iron Teaching Rocks to Rust, which is a huge installation that he's put together over the last 4 or 5 years. I don't really follow the art scene. I'm like weird. People call me an artist, but I don't know any artists in Detroit. People call me a printer, but I don't print commercially. As a matter of fact, I'm going to start, this year I'm starting that if you want to hire me to do a poster for you, you have to get a letter of recommendation from a previous client recommending you to be my client, But, Detroit is full of things all around. There's a lot of street art. There's an area called Eastern Market that pays, street muralists to do huge installations. So that's all over there. And, it's just wide open. I would say I live in Poletown East, and it's one of the poorest neighborhoods in Detroit. And that's why I live there. And but there's a lot going on there. As I was telling Matt and Leah, we had a world-renowned celloist who was doing a solo performance with the Detroit Symphony that did a performance, a 45-minute performance for our block. He requested, because he knew he was coming, because there's a book out, if you, and it's in the public library probably, if it isn't, you can ask and they will order it. It's called The $500 House by Drew Phillips, and it's an adventure of a 23-year-old who bought a house on the auction for $500, and he goes through the process of, renovating the house in the neighborhood and talking about neighbors in the neighborhood, and that gives you a really good snapshot of the grassroots. So I call it communification, where communities are built, as opposed to gentrification, where developers build stuff, but where the people at the grassroots build a community. So he talks about that. And that's happening all over Detroit in little pockets, and these pockets are now getting together and becoming a political force. Yep. Okay, again, thank you very much for coming tonight. And like I said, dig deep. The Oakland Public Library will appreciate your support. Okay, thank you. Oh, and I will